Series 94003 through items 64. Every day, all normal people feel as though they've lived too long. And at some other time, they fear they won't live long enough. Only idiots can hear the statement, "Go figure," and then try to go do it. What more valiant soldier can be imagined than man? A warrior knowing full well the ultimate outcome of the battle, but who nonetheless continues to fight as though otherwise. Now, hear it for ourselves. Progress must produce trash. Look at man. Go figure. As he grew older, though he prefers it be called wiser and more mature, well, as he did, this one man looked back over his experience and offered us his versatile view of how to ultimately cope. Quoting, "To be concerned, upset by life's a job that scarcely pays. To come to grips, turn loose, submit to living in a daze." I assume I've worn out my hollow threats about threatening to reread them, to try and kind of give it that. After breakfast one morning, one father said the following to his child. The operational reality behind ordinary man's binary-based concepts of good and evil is like this. Evil is whatever is predictable, and good is whatever is left. Or, as according to certain unfamiliar holy scripture, the tongue giveth and the lips taketh away. The ultimate torment for, well, what should be the ultimate torment for a more alert person would be passivity, resignation, and a respectable position in the community. Basic studies in construction techniques. After man's early days, as he strove to build and rise above ground level, the intellect tore apart his original foundation, and speech attempts to put it back together. Civilization, Earth's only known vehicle that can run over its own foot. Only a man individually more conscious could say that his mind is truly his own. And even then, he wouldn't be telling the whole truth. The simplistic of thought always believe that they alone discovered thought. Upon hearing everyone from philosophers to priests to politicians and psychologists trying to describe just what does constitute happiness, one man thought, hell, happiness is hormones. Joke for the day. A more conscious person is like someone who slipped upstairs and opened their birthday gifts before they were supposed to. With an ordinary person, this would ruin their day, not to mention their life. As they danced across the floor, one man said, "I shan't be happy until I am dead." And his partner said back, "I shan't be dead until I am happy." And the recently deceased band took a short break. An explanation of why people are generally not interested in activities such as this. Why get on a bus that you're not sure is going anywhere when you were born on one that you know's not? A gentleman in the city has developed his own do-it-yourself test, which proceeds thusly. How can you tell if you're properly sane, educated, and civilized? Answer, everything you know is upside down and backwards. Even though money is ultimately of no more value than the non-essentials it can buy, it can be used as an ad hoc measuring device to grab fresh glimpses of everyday life normally overlooked. To wit, ask yourself, which is worth the most, religion or drugs? Then say to yourself, well, which costs the most? It's hard to figure an audience that seems equally split between philosophers and druggies. Not to mention the intellectually homeless. How human emotions work. People care if they say they care, even if they don't. How human emotions work. A question and answer game is played between one father and his son. What's worse than being wrong? Being bland. A certain self-made scientist, who carries his secret lab with him wherever he goes, presents one of his latest findings. The mind is like a most beautiful precision machine, an ordinary thought like oil, far too thick and cold. One man described attractive dance as a kind of physical speech. And a second one said, don't you mean to say that good talk is like a verbal dance? And a third man interrupted, do you guys know what time it is and that there are people trying to sleep, both upstairs and down? Entertainment at home. Luxuriously bathed in inertia, the herd collectively raised itself to its expectant toes, excitedly yawned, and with full force stayed right where it was. In certain quarters, the suspicion still lingers that Aesop did not die of natural causes, but was somehow done in by disgruntled animals. And the fact continues to elude history books inasmuch as we have no word for extra species homicide. A viewer sends along this. It seems to me that what you call a more conscious person would just be someone who had let the imaginary air out of the make-believe inflatable doll that the rest of us call civilization and the human experience. One small-town student of the ancient mystical tradition serves up this idea. Pain can serve as the great reminder of how much you hurt. And suspecteth I, were the Green Knight dead yet, he'd be rolling over in his mind. Life is juice. Life is juice in the basement, and life is juice in the penthouse. Life is juice. What else do you need to know? Only those without personally realized taste can actually believe that there is no accounting for taste. A chap reflected, one nice thing about being a no-talent Philistine is that you can get a job as a critic without any additional qualifications or training. If you live on a cube and turn the corner, then there's time and thought. Time makes orbs go around, circuits, systems. Man thought, thought man. But I don't understand it. But it doesn't understand me. 10 viewers got together and sent in this note. If we could just be certain that what you're saying is actually as entertaining as we think it is, then we could for sure enjoy it as much as we suspect we do. They're on to something, you know. The tricky aspect of this kind of thing is that if you take it too seriously, it becomes a religion of sorts. And if you don't, it tends to become so mentally disconcerting as to cause most people to simply tune it out. Drab weeds will take dandelions to be heroic. Simple minds will oftentimes take confused ones to be onto something. A correspondent offers up this query. If man contains no artificial ingredients, then how do you explain the existence of thought and of his many criticisms thereof? Not a pretty picture to ponder. A viewer furnishes us with our inspirational thought for the day. Hey. Quoting, as always, Many are called, but few are chosen. Much dough rolled, but little bread rosen. He said it was inspirational. On to something else. Now, I mean, he said it was, but now here's all human institutions handily explained by yours most truly. All cows want a cowboy. All human institutions handily explained, not by some cockamamie viewer, by me. Our child's joke for the day. One little lad told his sister, don't ever let adults tell you that you're behaving as though you're possessed by evil spirits, because only someone possessed by evil spirits would say such a thing. Ha ha. Hormones have not the type of memory life needs on this planet. Another reason for the introduction in man of thought. Hormones. We do, therefore we are. Neurons. We remember, thus we serve. A sometime student of such as this recently sat and asked himself, if greater consciousness is simply liberation from mere thinking, then would freedom actually be more than just lack of captivity? At the very heart of his musing lies the alluring snare of mistaking schools for learning, maps for travel, and descriptions for understanding. That's easier than actually having to think. It just will look like you argue. Men with small brains will go to great pains to spread out their appearance over as wide an area as possible. Yeah. Of course, as always, don't take such as that seriously unless you have any sense. One guy would periodically look around his life and remind himself, hey, don't take it so seriously. It's just life. You're going to pay for that, by the way. Trust me. Stay in your seat and you'll see. Challenge, the challenge. To give an example of the following characteristics: pathetic, pitiful, deplorable, and sickening. One acceptable response. Any human attempting to sell another human any non-essential civilized goods or services. The overall superintendent of this one building had this personal motto: think fast, talk slow, and dance dirty. Another example of the extraordinary, though oftentimes overlooked, mathematical justice of life as per one man's observation: feeling sorry for other people won't help them, but them doing so for you can you. Yeah, everybody would like that you just missed it, that's all. One man divides up life like this: strangers, he says, are just dead people you haven't met yet. The fuel rods in the atomic reactor of civilization are men's memories. After reading what everyone from philosophers to priests to politicians and psychologists had to say in attempting to define just what does constitute happiness, another guy thought, happiness is simply how you feel, and let it go at that. Adult-type fairy tale for the day. Local conditions in this one kingdom one day said to all of the people, all right, everyone who wants to be civilized and be able to stay here with all of your neighbors at the station while you wait on the train, raise your hands. Yeah. And after that was concluded, conditions announced, okay, now those of you remaining who are still waiting to find a spaceship, well, you guys stand over there until I can figure out what to do with you. Yeah. And they did. Because that's what they're all waiting on in the first place. The actual difference between children and adults is the difference between the local and the universal, the rigid and the loose, the doo-doo and the diaper. I say again, we seem to be equally divided between, quote, adults and, quote, children. Notice my courtesy in putting the two labels in quotes. And now another selection from The Young Person's Garden. Men's ideas for runaway trains came from their discovering their brains. Now spread the manure and call the Crow Patrol. As per legend, in response to this sort of activity, life one time declared, the mind was intended to do what it now does. And if any of you think otherwise, then do something about it. You know, life can get edgy at times. And another viewer so corresponds. If indeed man is making the kind of progress you keep saying he is, then it would seem like the time is about come when you could quit talking about it. I'd say the best letter of the day. Nay, the week. Nay, the month. And you know he's almost correct. Hormones holler, hey, look at my thighs, my butt. While neurons are left to say, hey, look over here at my and for the first time revealed, man's unstated stupor formido, terrestrial terror. I made up the term. Here it comes. Stupor formido. If we quit talking about civilization, it might go away. I wouldn't speak for me personally, I'm speaking for humanity. Another peek at history. While kings have been able to control men's bodies through force, priests have their minds with nary a weapon. Of course, both of them are run, like the rest of us, by life's neural network. One guy presents his latest thinking to his fellow man, quoting, if you like government, you're going to love God. And another dip into our series of PMS, put more simply. I couldn't have it came out that way. To be more conscious is a certain brain endeavor, which, simply put, is to put fresh juice where words once were. The rebel's final triumph of consciousness over mentation. One guy would periodically look around at his life and remind himself, hey, don't take it at face value. It's just life. Critics of the human activities of man are like those taking shots at the reflection of shadow plays. Looking up from his history book, a lad asked his dad, why is it so common to find royalty having reserved for themselves the exclusive use of certain names, colors, even foods? And the elder replied, well, son, that's because the big shots of the world know they're not big shots at all and have to try and distinguish themselves from the ordinary as best they can. He then secretly bent down and whispered to the boy his permission to use this allegorically on himself. A viewer inquires, if I could hold just one single thought in mind constantly, would I then be more conscious or just single-minded? And the viewer writes, I don't like it when you read questions from viewers and then don't answer them. If you believe that life is getting worse and regressing, you're not a man, you're a weather vane. One man's business card reads, the brain's an orange, the mind a juicer. What line of work are you in? On this certain other planet in another galaxy, those who know the secret of life can ride the local buses at cut rate once they're 65 or dead. The three pillars of the people's real religion. GD, GL, GL. Get drunk, get loud, get laid. Everyone is born with the seed of a fairy tale, a mystical quest in their pocket. But the civilized mind soon surrounds and chokes it. But hey, don't whine and look sad at me. Are you sure that that's necessarily the end of it? The three characteristics of the people's real mental condition. DDD. Dazed, dumb, and distracted. Another look-in on the history of history. There are two kinds of history. That of the civilized and the savage, which is written, told, or otherwise recorded, and then that of the conscious man. Another day, another view. How's by me? How's by you? One prime purpose of human speech is to make men feel immortal. And now for a new feature on our show. The simple made even simpler. If you want to get somewhere in life, go somewhere. One man who could think of extraordinary things was once accused of being a space alien and replied, close, but more like a temporal one. One guy would periodically look around his life and remind himself, hey, don't take it so personally, it's just life. And then there was this other guy who would periodically look around his life and say, hey, don't be taking it all so locally. This is life itself we're talking about here. Case closed. There are no sober philosophers in bars, which is why we have bars. Since its initial time, how about MRT, Monday refined time, picking up from something we were talking about last time. Last several times about how you could see civilization itself as being, or you could see talk itself as being men's attempt to be more civilized, and then I tried to up the stakes for you a little and say that it was like people trying to rationalize being civilized. After giving the caveat that, it's not rationalized in some psychological sense and all that. You're supposed to remember to have heard it from last time. So now you've had a few hours. Could we up the stakes a bit, at least sideways? What if I said that the purpose of talk with civilization, or the purpose of talk with man, is an attempt to justify being civilized? Now, if we had corncob brains here in the audience, if we had middle-class people, decent, law-abiding citizens, I'm sure somebody that had a GED or better, rub it in, that's right, would probably say, well, hell, that's synonymous. Now, normally people, I'm speaking for you, but normally if I had used rationalize in the beginning, many people take rationalize in the sense of it being subject to, well, they would take it as being a negative observation on those doing the rationalizing. I know that there are more definitions than that, but the reason I'm saying I'm refining it and I have drug it out over several times. You do know ordinarily, the way it's just used colloquially, if somebody, you just said, why did you hit your kid's sister? Or, why did you cheat on your income tax? You say something, and people, the way it's normally used when they rationalize it, or when they're accused and they give an answer, the other person, the questionnaire, says, you're just trying to rationalize. What it means is you're trying to weasel your way out. You know you're wrong. You know what the answer you're giving is incorrect or invalid, inoperative, and you're just saying that because you don't have a real response. That's the way that the kind of connotation I was inferring from last time. But now, talking about trying to refine it, at least sideways, how about justify? And I know that you could use justify colloquially, at least in the same way, but consider justify now not in a sense of trying to cover up, but look at it more on the basis, those of you in the advertising business. Look at man's speech as a continuing voiceover. You know what that is, don't you? It's on TV, and it's a car. I know all your favorites. It shows a blank road, and just before the car shows up, it says, "A road diverged in the woods." And of course, that sound you hear is Robert Frost going, "God damn, boy, you know, somebody lift the lid off this coffin and let me at him." Of course, they would have used Dante, but the thing is, I know the copyright ran on Frost, and they just barely slipped in under the wire if they'd have just used Dante. Come think about it, they should have, because then they could have a scantily dressed girl, old Beatrice, you know, running around behind the, you know, in this car chasing her. But at any rate, I'm not in the business. It's not my affair. At any rate, back to, you know what advertising is? A voiceover is when you don't actually have an announcer there on screen. Let's say it's on video. Whoever's doing the talking is not there. They're showing something. They're showing the food cooking, and the voiceover is just whoever, you know, the announcer who is reading about, you know, your food will cook faster here using such and such, you know, motor oil, or what do you call it? You cook in olive oil or whatever it is. That's a voiceover. That it seems to have some connection, but there's nobody right there on screen having to do the words. They can be showing, you know, everything from ships. They can be showing foreign countries. They can cut from, you know, one place to another, and the voiceover is the one that's carrying along the continuity of the script there for 30 seconds or a minute. What if you looked at human speech? Again, I'm saying to justify what you do. I could say explain, but I'm trying to get you to consider the full ramifications of not just a single attack, because it's not an attack to begin with. Say, well, that's all human speech is. It is all of that. It is all of that, even in the negative sense that I said that I didn't actually mean myself by justify. I mean by rationalize. That is certainly what people do when they accuse each other of rationalizing. Just because I said that's not what I meant, that doesn't mean that that's not what they mean, which means that's what they mean. Yeah. So a large part of human speech is, according to them, not me, is, wait a minute, all you're trying to do is, you know, rationalize what you did, trying to weasel out of it. I didn't mean that doesn't happen. I just meant that wasn't what I was talking about. Because it does happen, or they wouldn't say it, right? Well, they could be wrong. Well, how would they say it? I don't know. They could have been wrong when they said it. Well, where'd the words come from? What was it? Again, are we back to this? It's that other evil planet that nobody can identify. And they keep sending down these things like, send down wrong ideas. Send down television that has a whole lot of violence on it and they can't do anything about it. Make it simple. If man said it, it exists. Case closed. So, we have people attempting to weasel out, that is, to rationalize what they did. But also now, I'm trying to refine it in a certain way that people, everybody, that talk, I'm suggesting to you, all of human speech is a running voiceover attempting to justify why we are now living, in a sense, compared to hormones, we're living, I'll go ahead and say it and get out of the way, since you know I'm not serious, an almost artificial, unnatural life. Yeah. Not really, as you know. But that was part of my joke tonight. That was a joke? Oh. That said, that I explained the 3 pillars of people's real religion. And by real religion, I meant, you know, the 97.5%, the hormonal body. Not this little part up here that we like to play around with, the brain. From here down is the real people's religion. Remember, it was, the 3 pillars were GD, GL, GL. Get drunk, get loud, get laid. That's it. On that basis, that would be the natural life I'm suggesting to you. Whether you like the taste of alcohol or whether you're that Randy, whether you're that pushy in life, that would be, from a very crude yet operable description, that would be man's natural life. At least from here down. If we take away civilization, I'm not saying we should, but from here down, the natural life would be that. Get drunk, get laid, have a bite to eat maybe, watch a movie, steal a car and drive it around the block until you get tired. You know, just that. Live for the day. All right. We're not going back. We're not supposed to go back. We shouldn't go back, etc. But in every civilized person, every sane person, which we're at one of those nice junctures where we could actually run over Robert Frost if they'd lay his body out in the road, because, well, what I was going to point out sounds like just the opposite of what it should be. But remember, tonight I pointed out that that guy's test at home to tell if you're civilized, educated, erudite. The way to tell is that everything you know is upside down and backwards. But, of course, I don't know how you're going to prove that to ordinary people, are you? I got it! Tell them that's not true. At any rate. Those most civilized are those who, I guess I just say it and get out of the way. Those that are the most civilized are those that hate it the most. Those, I can do 2 or 3, those who are most civilized are those who feel it to be the most unnatural. Well, I hit a piece of it last time, and I don't think I stayed on it long enough to make much sense when I pointed out that if we were dealing with less civilized, less sophisticated people, and I pulled out some example like a bunch of bricklayers or shrimp fishermen down in Mississippi, that if you went into a bar somewhere with them and accused them of being uncivilized and point out to them that you had just flown, you know, that you were some kind of genie, that you just left some nice cocktail party, the weekend, the every Friday tea and cocktail party amongst the literati or the philosophy department at Harvard, and you started describing the way they were and how polite they were, and even people that had differences and were fighting over the same chair, trying to get tenure there, and you could say, but how neat they are and polite, and you're staying here with these guys, and over the corner, suddenly, while you're trying to talk, there are a couple of guys fighting, and you find out they're fighting over whose turn it was, you know, to play the shuffle thing. And you try to tell them, you say, don't you people feel ashamed? Do you know what I'm talking about those people at Harvard? They go, oh, yeah, I've seen movies. We got TV. We know what you're talking about. And you go, well, don't you feel ashamed? And they think, no. You follow? The people, the Harvard types, using my other example, up there, they're the ones, see, the ones down here, if you said, well, so you don't really feel bad, you don't envy them. And they might think, yeah. You know, they might, you know they'd say, well, I'd rather have, you know, the kind of money they make than what I make. But if I said, the whole idea of being civilized and live that kind of genteel, civil life, does that, do you feel left out? Do you envy it? Hell no. And I can say, well, does it annoy you that they do it? And I think, you know, what kind of damn question's that? You know, I don't care what they do, as long as they don't come in here and tell us, you know, to straighten up, or somebody up there by this bar and start saying, well, you got to wear a tie when you come in. Or, you know, what the hell do we care? We know it goes on. We know that people live a different life, but, you know, give us a break. That sort of thing. Not quite as verbally, but it's the same thing. You understand, if we jump back up to the real sophisticated people in another time zone, they could not begin, there's not an equal side to this that they could verbalize in the same way I just put the words in the bricklayer's mouth in Mississippi, not that cheap bar. But those things that are civilized, they dislike it. They have to rationalize, they have to justify, they have to listen to this voiceover, which is one reason they talk more about being civilized than the less civilized. It's all a relative matter. But they dislike being civilized. They must continually justify, rationalize, talk about it, more so than those who are less civilized down in Mississippi, my bricklayers. Now, it would sound to be just the opposite. From any rational view, you'd think, well, who enjoys being civilized the most? And you'd think, well, those are most civilized. Because that sounds like saying, well, who do you think enjoys cars the most? Those who own cars or those who don't? And you think, well, that's nuts. You say, who do you think enjoys having nice clothes? Those who have nice clothes or those that just go around wearing rags and don't care? It all seems ridiculous. It would seem to be that whatever, if we're going to talk about needs or necessities, which I won't get into where we're talking about essentials or not, but you would think, well, whatever subject we're talking about, to say who enjoys the subject, who enjoys the activity the most, those who apparently do it, who obviously do it, or those who don't. And you think, well, that's insane. It's got to be those who do, or why else would they do it? Well, I got nothing here to prove because I got no evidence. So I'm just going to tell you. You assume you can hear it so we can press on with the matter. Those are most civilized have to justify. And it's not, I say I can't prove it. I can if you can listen, because just listen at their verbal life. They're the ones who talk about civilized matters. Those guys down in Mississippi, they don't ever talk about civilized matters. I mean, about the most civilized matter that they probably talk about in the bar I just made up is maybe, later that night, one of them maybe has got a coat that his wife gave him for Christmas. He may ask his buddy, will you hold my coat before I cut Charlie? So I won't get blood on it. That's about it. But they're not going to be staying around talking about, how to explain that pseudo post-romantic symphony that Poe wrote that is now selling. Got too obscure, didn't I? They do not stand around and talk about the suspicions that Pavarotti is losing his voice. They do not stand around and get into heated arguments over, is postmodernism itself now passé? Which I'm not laughing at any of that. The point is, it's the civilized who must, well, I say must. Let's go back to me saying I had no evidence when, of course, I lied to you. It's right in front of you. I don't have it. Life has it. I don't have it. But all you got to do is listen to the civilized talk. In all respects, what they write and etc. But we were talking about speech. Listen to them talk. Now you could say again, if you're an ordinary person, you go, wait a minute, you're dispelling your own contention, because that just shows that they are civilized and they like it. No. If you like something, you don't have to talk about it. They're having to continually justify. They're having to run. They're having to be a mouthpiece for this voiceover that life runs through man, that helps people justify the fact that I am living, in a sense, what a majority of me still thinks to be, shall we say, at least slightly unnatural. Now, just on the basis that you see something you want to eat, you see something you want to take it. Oh no, that's childish. We're grown up, right? Okay. Those who are the most civilized, by any observation, are those who must continually justify. It is just a running commentary coming out of their mouth. And I could bring in other things, the way they act, their gestures, and etc. But just their speech. Listen to it. Listen to yourself when you're around civilized company. But it is so subtle that again you'd think, oh, wait a minute, that's proving nothing. Maybe the opposite, because they're just showing that those who are civilized enjoy being civilized. They enjoy going to the opera. They enjoy talking about literature. They don't want to be in some cheap bar down in Biloxi getting in fights. I know. I ask you again, though. Hormones don't have to talk. Hormones made a statement tonight. We serve, therefore we are. You don't have to rationalize in the full sense. You don't have to justify. You don't have to give a voiceover to eating. Once you start overeating, once you start dining, then what do? But no one, any sane person, never on this planet has anybody passing by ordinary consent, by ordinary judgment to be sane. No one has ever had to justify, rationalize, even talk about being hungry and eating. When do you start talking about it? When it becomes a civilized, when it goes from being a necessity to being a need, to being a hobby. When it gets above the line, which is the difference between eating and dining. It gets above the line, and then what do people have to do? Listen to them when they're up there talking. At my cocktail party, someone will say, have you been to that new Italian restaurant in downtown? Someone will say, yes, I heard that the cook there, as a matter of fact, or the chef, I'm sorry. The chef. The cook's in that place down in Biloxi. Well, I say the cook, he's the maintenance man, but they let him. At any rate, and someone says, well, have you been to that new Italian restaurant so-and-so? And someone says, Buffy and I, or Dr. Smithers and his wife, we almost went there last weekend, but we heard that the chef there had been unceremoniously discharged from such and such restaurant in Manhattan. And now he thinks he's going to slip up here in Massachusetts and pull the wool over our, if I may say so, culinary eyes. Not yours truly. I was not born in Mississippi. No offense. But you understand, it's just a hobby. We're not attacking that. But you understand, once you get above the line, once you get into the civilized world, as apparently as innocuous a pastime as gourmetting is. Assuming that the people do not overeat and they're not grossly blowing up their hearts and stomachs and livers. But it's just a hobby. That's part of their hobby as they go out. This group of intellectuals and these educators, that's part of their hobby, is going out to dine. But part of it is what? A large part of it. In the full sense of the word, that they probably read, they probably subscribe to some, dining in Boston this week. Yeah. They buy cookbooks, they buy biographies of famous chefs. They discuss recipes, they discuss where they're going. That's part of it, there's nothing wrong with it. But you understand, it will not survive without that kind of constant justification. With no negative color meant to it. They just have to continually talk about it. Man himself, not these individuals, no. But man himself must continually have this running voiceover, in a sense, to justify, to make him complacent enough to live a kind of life that a large part of him goes, what the hell is this? The voiceover is like a form of distraction. It helps a man stare. It helps a man not get too intellectually frisky. Such as to ask very deep things like, what the hell's going on here? We don't want that. I was being theatrical because if you go, what the hell's going on here? You're all right. Because that sounded a little pissed, like, well, what's going on? But for a man just to go, what the hell is going on here? No. Not supposed to have that. You're supposed to say kind of, I was trying to do a combination of looking kind of dazed and distracted and look fairly intelligent, which I guess I'll have to admit I'm not up to. You wait till I get my GED diploma, though. It's coming. Then I'll be able to pull that off. Well, back to one of my suggested useful aspects of all this is, once you see that, once you hear that, if you retain any sense of being more conscious, you can no longer find anything offensive in the blabber, the palaver, the screeds of human conversation. That it's no longer simply a matter of, as many people are prone to do, is to listen to everyone from religious leaders, politicians, social critics, neighbors. People always whining. People always complaining. People always trying to justify themselves. People, and then it starts falling into what sounds to be, with ordinary people it used to, it sounds to be matters of morality, if not religious dictums. Well, they talk about themselves too much. Shame, shame, we should be more humble. Why do people always blabbing about themselves? I for one, I get so tired of hearing people talk about themselves because I've always prided myself of trying to watch what I say and not go around, blowing my own horn. Is anybody listening? That frightens me when I start doing ordinary people and you start sitting there and I see some of you involuntarily nod and I think, no, I'm talking about that kind of shit right there, and you're going, yeah. You may do it again. Somebody's attacking, undoing somebody. They said, can you believe everybody in the world is not, all they do is talk about themselves. I'm religious. I don't even mean this from any particular religious any specific viewpoint, but I'm just saying all people do is talk about themselves. And I, for one, I have always prided myself. I don't mean some kind of fake humility. I just at least try to keep some out. Are you listening? At any rate. Well, that's part of the common running fuel of civilization itself, if not the train, at least the bus of civilization, is that kind of not extra, but interspecies criticism. That, well, people talk too much. Well, I think you're onto something there. Could you maybe address our little, group next weekend, on that matter? Well, I'd be glad to. I'll work up a nice speech about that. No, they have not shot Captain Irony yet. He's always lurking about, but do not let him. Do not let him slip into your phone booth and try to change clothes. Let him stay out there amongst the riffraff where he belongs. The criticism that goes on constantly, that's part of the human conversation. The criticism, back and forth, is the kind of dance across the floor. Betweenst everybody. Is, God damn, you talk too much. Who, me? Who do you think I'm talking to? That kind of thing. What do you mean you're Italian? I thought I was Greek. You're Jewish? You're an Arab? What? You're from Northern Ireland? Yeah, I thought you were Irish, not Northern. It goes on, and you can just jump in there. I just tried to give you just jump in anywhere and go, oh, well, that's right. And what everybody's doing, at least all you got to do is listen. Suddenly, if I'd talked any faster, dividing up world into those kind of dichotomous dance partners, just within seconds you go, oh yeah, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're beginning to attack the kind of people that deserve it. Once you understand what human talk is about, that it is no more. Several people like the one tonight that a guy that said a viewer wrote in and said that it seemed to him all this talk about that I was doing about somebody more conscious, which of course would be somebody who understands what I've been talking about besides me. He said, this viewer said, that he thought that the whole thing sounded like nothing more than somebody, or this more conscious person, whoever it might be, would just be someone going around letting the imaginary air out of the make-believe inflatable dolls that everybody else, that is all the rational, sane people, call civilization and the human experience. Right. In other words, you're just going to take all the fun out. If what I'm saying, if in some way I could suddenly, spread it out like manure before the Crow Patrol got here, it wouldn't just take all the fun out of life, it'd take all the life out of life, which is why it can't be done. It would take all of the civilization out of life. That's the imaginary error. This imaginary viewer said that he thought a more conscious person would be, that's all they'd be up to, is letting the imaginary air out of this make-believe inflatable doll that everybody else calls the human experience. Now give us a break. Okay. But off on your own little personal private spree, if you can see that there is absolutely nothing ever amiss with all of the superficially ridiculous, silly, maniacal, egomaniacal, don't write me with any of these words, foolishness, folly of human speech, human debate, human conversation. Because you make a grave, speaking just between you and I, you make a grave misstep to single out any person or any group. That is, say, well, every religious leader, anybody who believes they're a politician, or you turn on as a politician, or a public figure, or a group, particular group of public figures. Some, the Christian Democrats are the such and such party. God, you understand you're still part of the dance, and you have missed the point that it is only the most dense, the most childish themselves, who find that there is something to criticize, specifically. If you're going to criticize, I've tried to throw out a few hints. It would be just to go, hey, screw life. Now we're getting somewhere. If you want to go with that, go with that. At least it shows a certain amount of originality and perhaps, we don't know, but perhaps some insight. Assuming you don't actually become that violent physically. But if you can just if you could non-physically and even non-verbally express the attitude of screw life, you know, you might be onto something. Figure of speech. But you're definitely not on anything to be selective, as you should be, in your criticism, which is the only sane way to do it, right? Yes. All right. I mean, what are you going to criticize? If you're a sane person, you're going to criticize what? All right, I'll answer. That what needs it? Case closed, I know. Bring us a beer. You're not out of pork skins here, are you? The train, the bus, everything would just grind to a halt. I know it's nobody like the other man who pointed out that he thought that the human mind was like a precision engine. But thought, oil that's too thick and cold. So almost, many people like, I can almost think in a way that I just know would please me, but it's like, At any rate, that is exactly what would be going on if people did not selectively criticize human speech. Forget behavior. Speech is what we're talking about, which is the heart of civilization. But you say, if you're an ordinary person, you'd say, well, how can you make such a blanket statement that we should not criticize in a blanket way? Yeah. All right, let me put it back like I was doing it. They would want to say, how can you make a blanket statement of saying that we should not selectively criticize? Because what should we criticize? And they would answer their own question. If I looked dumb, went, oh, they go, well, we'll answer for you. I go, well, go ahead. We criticize being sane, sober, concerned, serious people. We criticize one thing and one thing only. We do our best. Yeah. We criticize that which, let me guess, needs criticizing. Exactly. If that were not the way it worked, then the train of criticism, sometimes known as civilization, it would be dead in the water. And do not have the mixed metaphor, the anti-mixed metaphor society write me again. The train would be dead in the water. Another picture that strikes me as not a pretty one to contemplate. We can go from everyone else to all you've got to do is listen to your own tongue. Listen to your own words. For your whole life you should be able to listen. If you're any good now, you should be able to run like an absolute instant replay for just a few seconds. It might take you 4 or 5 times to do it, or a dozen times, but just a few seconds, and you can hear you talking for all of your life up until today. You can just hear it all. And what does it amount to? Forget any sort of criticism now of yourself. Forget any, well, wait a minute, I ain't explained that. Listen to it. It is exactly what I'm telling you. It has been a running voiceover trying to justify. Remember, we have extracted all negative comment, all negative impact or intent from the word justify. It's just man attempting to explain, why am I living like this? Because people could not live like that without talking about it. Not that it's wrong, but it is not the way that men would live were they not civilized. You know that. Because they're still in our midst. We have uncivilized people. I mean, that's why we have prisons. That's why we have ad agencies and banks, to get them off the street and give them something to do. There are uncivilized folks amongst us. There's uncivilized folks amongst you individually. Speech with just eensy-teensy exceptions. Which way is the bathroom? Beer's how much? Other than that, other than important. The Hubble tells you still can't see through that damn Hubble thing? Do you know how many beers I could have bought for what it takes to try and put glasses on that mother? right, others are no small, relatively insignificant, technical, specific matters. The rest of human speech is this voiceover of men trying, and I'm of course being loose saying men trying to do it, but of men trying to explain why are we living like this. That's all country and western music. That's every piece of love poetry. It's history itself. It is the normal human conversations between people that I was referring to. It's people saying, do you love me like you used to? Oh, you know I do. Yeah, but you've been acting, you don't come see me as much as you used to last year when we first started going to bed together. Oh, no, I still like you like that. And you could stand away from it if you didn't know there was parties and go, oh, come on. That's not right with them. Or, why do people have to talk like that? They're either attracted or they should be able to. They don't have to stand around and go, nah, nah, nah. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Hormones don't. Hormones get tired. You get tired of the guy or the girl you're with, and hormones go, hey, let's get the hell out of here. How'd we end up here? How'd we move all our clothes over here with her to begin with? Why'd we do this? All the way from those kind of very specific examples of two little people looking at us, a NASA view of planet Earth, and you look down, it's all you can do to make out North America, much less trying to look down and see Rochester or Santa Fe or Garden Hills, and then try and figure me and that girl was living in that apartment house over at, and you think, there's how important it is that my whole life right now is the way she mistreated me, or why did I end up with her or him? All the way from that to your on TV, and it's the Pope or a president of some country saying, we don't know how much longer we can passively stand by and see this kind of inhuman outrage taking place in Bosnia. How much longer we can stand to see the Catholics and Jews, or Catholics and Protestants, killing each other here in North. And you think, in either case, between two people that you over here going, oh, I still love you. Oh, you sure you love me? I love you. And you think, what a bunch of bullshit. You can go from that. Two little people that you could never find no amount. Could be one of you, could be one of them. All the way from that to prime ministers, religious leaders making what appears to be cosmically important pronouncements. And according to, what kind of ordinary cynic and critic you are, you can go, well, both of them's bullshit. Yeah. Right. I mean, how many more years you going to have to say, well, that's bullshit. Well, sure it is. That's civilization. Yeah. And it's only ordinary people go, no, wait a minute. Now, I'm not talking about everything. As long as you're not talking about everything, you're safe. You're safe. That is, you're going to ride that train until it's dead in the water. And don't call me to come bail you out. There's not much help when you're on a train that's dead in the water. A boat doesn't, well,